So I'm going to talk about Mercury today, and okay, there we go. So my name's Fletcher Moore. You've probably seen my name on the front of the building. I'm the lead web developer for Institute Communications, and our team maintains and develops Mercury. And Mercury Reader, which is the Drupal module that connects to Mercury. We also maintain the GT theme for Drupal, and we are the keepers of the brand for the GT theme for WordPress, although we don't actually do direct maintenance on that one. And then we take care of about 45 odd websites, including the News Center, which I like to think of as the main stage for news here. It's the big stage. I could be full of it, possibly, but that's the way I think of it. And the campus calendar. And I have to say that if you come away from this today with one thing, it should be to listen to my music and read my writing. So, yeah.
I'm glad you added that. That's really good.
Yeah. I debated after a while. So Mercury is it's a syndication system. I'm not entirely sure everybody knows what that means, but 2009, I think it was, NPR created something they called COPE, which was a terrible name, but it stands for Create Once, Publish Everywhere. And the idea, I think, should be fairly clear from that. They publish all their news stories one time, and then all of the constituent websites for all the various stations that carry NPR are able to display their work. So we did it a year before they did, but we didn't come up with a clever name for it, so we don't get all of the conference money, I guess. So the idea behind it is that it is exactly the same, that staffers around Georgia Tech can create news and events, and there's a few other things which I'll talk about, and then those things can be used, displayed on websites all over campus. Basically any website can display any Mercury content with some technical limitations. I should say that the scope of what I'm going to talk about today it's aimed at people who are both at people who are not familiar with Mercury, but also users of it. So I think there's a little something for everyone, and I really wanted to talk about this because we work in a virtual basement. I mean, we used to work in an actual basement, and I feel like we kind of work in a basement still, in a sense. Like we're not terribly visible, as the illustration of me demonstrates. And it's periodically, I feel like this information needs to be re-upped, and that people need to become re-familiarized with this. So, and then also there are some usability concerns that we want to make sure people are aware of. And in order to be good stewards of data, you have to know how to use the system properly. So let's see. Yes, and so Mercury content appears on, I want to say, around 100 to 200 sites. It's hard to say because there's about 400 groups in Mercury, but some of them have kind of, were created a long time ago and aren't being used anymore. So it's a fair number, and above all, the News Center and the campus calendar. In fact, the only way to get content into the campus calendar is through Mercury, and anyone can add anything to the campus calendar. There's a measure of responsibility that goes with that, but it's because it's totally unfiltered. But you have to go through Mercury to do it, and you don't have to have a website in order to create events to put into the calendar. You just have to have a group, which I'll talk about momentarily. Oh yes, a brief history of Mercury. So. Okay. Long about 1996, I think, Georgia Tech hired Macquarium to install a system called Dynabot, which they made, and it did not last very long. It wasn't, people didn't like it, and my predecessor built a new version of it, which he cleverly called Dynabot 2. This was similar on the front end. It was a form-based system where you would create news and events, and there was a little snippet of PHP that you would add to your website. And then there was this incredibly long configuration file that we had to maintain by hand. And about 2008, this got to be, it was too much trouble to continue taking care of. And so myself and Eric Huffman and Brian Jordan, who have passed, not from the world, but from here, we sat down for 6 months and evaluated CMSs and chose, at the time, Drupal 6, and built this thing. It is now on Drupal 9 and is about to be on Drupal 10. And hopefully will continue to the heat death of the universe. I just wanted to say one thing about Mercury, which is that they were responsible for what is widely regarded as the worst animated film ever made. And in the process of making this, 3 people died, including Anne Bancroft. Okay.
Oh my God.
Yes. Okay. So with that behind us, Mercury is built around this concept of groups. So there's usually a one-to-one correspondence between, if you have a particular department, office, whatever, you'll have a group associated with that department or office. And groups are for, all content is associated with one or more groups. Groups determine one thing and one thing only, and that's who can edit the material in that group. So I think there's some misconceptions about what groups actually mean and do. All of the content that's produced in a group can be used by anyone, so it can appear on any website. And that's, of course, what's meant by syndication, and that's what we try to encourage. We try to encourage people to use other people's content so that it's all amplified, essentially. So I was hoping to be able to point to things, which I can't really, but there's a couple of things to note here. There's a few widgets associated with groups that appear on the website. And the main thing to note is that there is a groups index. So if you need to be associated with a particular group, or if you need something from a particular group, you can go through the index and you can search for the group name, and it'll list whoever manages the group, and you can contact them and ask them whatever it is you need to ask them. There are 7 types of content in Mercury. There's the obvious one, news, this hideous image of the form. News is news. I don't really think I need to explain that, probably. News about Georgia Tech, obviously. There's also external news, which is if People Magazine does a feature on college computing, which is probably unlikely, but if they do, you would put it in here. This is anything external, so about Georgia Tech. Events, I think, are also probably self-explanatory. There is the one thing to note about events, and you can see this. Oh, there's a box in the right-hand column, right above where it says extras. I've been arguing that we need to put this someplace where it's a little more prominent, but it's add to the campus calendar. So if you check that box, you create an event, you check that box in a certain period of time. However, I think the calendar polls like every 15 minutes. Boom, it will be in the calendar. So profiles are a little more loosey-goosey. Like, you can use profiles really for any record of a human being, essentially. So some people use them for faculty profiles on their sites. The most prominent use I can think of is on the news, not the News Center, the main Georgia Tech website. There's the Experts Hub, and all of the Experts Hub information is syndicated out of Mercury. And this is actually, we expanded this recently, so it includes references to news and external news. I think that's right. I don't think there's a reference to events. I'm not sure off the top of my head. It probably should be. We'll add it. So if you have a profile of a particular faculty member and you've entered news about them, you can associate that with the faculty member. And a Mercury Reader will pull in all of that stuff. So it'll pull in the profile, it'll pull in all the associated material. Like, dead. Boilerplate is currently deprecated. It's coming back fairly soon. It's not a big deal for us to give, there's just like a stack of work ahead of it. But the idea behind boilerplate is that you have footers and things of that nature that you want to type over and over and over and over again. And you can associate a given footer with a group. You can say, by default, use this particular footer, or you can choose one of the other ones you've created, and it'll be added to the end of the content. Doesn't exist right now, will return soon. slides and playlists are also coming soon. These have to do with digital signs on campus. So right now, we contract with a company called 22 Miles to store all this content, and that's ending at some point. Hope I didn't just say something I wasn't supposed to, but we're going to replace it with Mercury content. So playlists are just lists of slides, and slides are just images that would appear on a digital sign. This will be coming probably, I think we'll start to phase it in within the next 6 months, I think is what we're aiming for. Man, if I wasn't supposed to say that, I'm sorry. Okay, all Mercury content types allow you to make references to images and video as well. And these are created separately using the media library. And again, these are associated with groups, so they can only be edited by people who are in a given group, but they are available for anyone to use. So the idea behind this was that we didn't want people to upload 10,000 images of Tech Tower, which they've done anyway. But you know, if it's a common thing, if it's Cabrera or Tech Tower or something of that nature, it's you know, I highly encourage you to look for something before uploading another image of it, unless it's different, the T is missing or whatever. So, all right. So once you've created content, or if you have found content that you wish to show on your website, the mechanism for doing that is called feeds. There are two types of feeds. There's automated feeds, which are procedural. So that means you have a set of filters, and if you look at the right-hand image, the left side of the right-hand image, you can see a few of these. I can't see them. So like in this particular example, this is actually the automated feed that feeds the campus calendar. And it's showing items of type event, obviously, that are included in the campus calendar and have been updated within the last 2 days. And that's actually an important point, which I'll come back to in a little bit, the 2 days thing. So you set all these various filters, and there are others in the add filter dropdown. There's title, there's keywords, there's categories. There may be others, I guess, updated, not updated, dateline, event time. And whichever filters you choose, the events that, or the items that meet those criteria will be shown in the feed items list. And when you save it, it'll be shown as it is here on the left. And then there's manual feeds. Manual feeds at first blush look fairly similar. You have a list of filters, but the filters are they're not producing the feed, they're producing content that is then available to be added to the feed, one item at a time. So the use case for this is if you are running a website and you have a given group and it has a bunch of content, but there's just this one thing from some other group that you want on your site, you create a manual feed and you can add things that way. Miss anything? Yes, feeds are associated with groups, same as other content items, and it only controls editing privileges. They can be consumed by anyone, including outside news organizations. We had a dream when we started that, like, I actually don't know the name of any of the media organizations in Atlanta because I listen to podcasts and stuff, but TV, I don't know, 11 or something like that, right? Yeah, so they can, if we wanted to, you give them an XML feed or access to a feed, we could, and I don't know why we would, but who knows? Okay. Feeds are output as XML, and I'll explain what that means. But if you look at the tab bar at the top right below where it says edit automated feed, campus calendar feed main, there's a little tiny link on there that says XML. And if you really want to see a bunch of XML, you can click that and you can see what the XML for the feed looks like. You don't have to look at it, but and unless you're a glutton for punishment, you probably shouldn't. But this is a standard data format, and it can be read by standard RSS readers. So it's a little bare bones, but it will pull in the title and I think a summary or something like that, and a link. It can be read by the Drupal Reader module, Drupal Mercury Reader module, a lot of words, which recreates the item on the target website, so your own website, if you're running Mercury Reader. And when I say recreates, I mean it makes pretty much a duplicate of it. There's the Drupal Feeds module, which is an older method of doing this, of pulling data in, which we don't recommend anymore because it does essentially this exact same thing that the Mercury Reader module does, and it's just extra work for you. There may be use cases that demand it, but I couldn't imagine what they possibly are. There are custom systems. I know Ivan Allen College has their own system for pulling in XML. And then WordPress. The WordPress plugin is, there's a lot of pressure to make this thing, and so we're going to make it. I'm pretty sure it'll be sometime within the next year, I mean, a year from today, probably sooner than that. There are some drawbacks to WordPress. It doesn't have caching, it doesn't have roles, it doesn't have all this stuff out of the box, and particularly because the Campus Press WordPress system is based off of a single code base, a lot of the modification that we require for Drupal sites is not really available. So it won't be as full-featured as the Drupal module, but it will provide a page of news, a page of events, and that will be modifiable within the UI in some hopefully useful way. So that's coming soon-ish. So having said all of that, tips and tricks, maxims and prestidigitation. Okay, so there's a few things that I want to talk about here, and this is something that, again, this is something I feel like needs to be re-upped periodically because people forget and people start doing things in weird ways, and it causes problems for us, but and probably for everyone else as well. So the first thing I want to talk about is making effective automated feeds. There's I think there's a tendency to think about feeds as being like a storage system. Mercury is the storage system. Feeds, all feeds do, they're just conduits from Mercury to an end user website. So I'll go back here a little bit. So that's, I said I was going to come back to this last filter that's set here. Item was updated after -2 days. So this is showing items that were updated within the last 2 days. And as I said, the calendar pulls Mercury data every 15 minutes, I think. So this is actually massively excessive. We could shrink it down. Well, we could shrink it down to 20 minutes if we wanted to, I suppose. I feel funny about doing that. We'll probably shrink it down to a day. And the purpose of this for end users is to keep these feeds fairly. This says this computer's about to restart. To snooze.
No.
Clicker doesn't. Do what?
I was just saying, no update this evening.
Later.
Do not restart.
It doesn't want to exit. Okay, well, I have 14 minutes and 33 seconds to finish then. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. The limits on the length of these feeds. So this thing is not being cooperative. Okay. Yeah, so the idea is you want to keep these feeds as short as possible because they are simply conduits. And the longer they are, and this one, the calendar feed is still, in my opinion, far too long. It used to be, I think, a week that it kept stuff in here. The reason for keeping it short is because the amount of XML it generates, and if you click that XML tab, you'll see it is immense. It's a very large file, and it has to generate that, and it has to send it to the client website. However often the client website is polling for this data, which for a lot of websites can be like hourly or even more frequently, calendar every 15 minutes. And it's a big load on Mercury, and it's a big load on the client website to pull that down frequently. So keeping it short is wise. And there's also, I should say that we've changed the way this works. It used to be that automated feeds were ordered by, if it was a feed of news items, it was ordered by a date line in descending order, I guess, so that the most recent item is at the top. In the case of events, it's ordered the reverse. So the how do you say the most upcoming thing? Like, I'm sure there's a German word for it, but the event that's coming soonest appears at the top of the list and then descends into the later events. And we got rid of that because, again, this is a conduit. It's not a storage device. It's not meant to be a representation of how the data will appear on your website. It used to. The old Mercury reader would actually display them in whatever order they were shown here. So we got rid of that because, well, we got rid of it because it was a technical nightmare, but it turns out that ordering by last updated, which is the way it works now, is actually very helpful because the thing that you worked on most recently is always going to be at the top of the list. And if something drops off your website, if you lose a node for some reason, an item, or you need to update something that's very old that's no longer in the feed, it's a very simple matter to bring it back, which is to just go find it, edit, save, and that will change the modification date and it'll pop back to the top of the list. So we think this has a lot of utility, but you can tell us. And the same, also because the automated feeds, both feeds create duplicates of the items on your local website, you can apply whatever mechanisms are available as you would any other content in that CMS Drupal. So that means you can create a view and you can order things however you like. This is actually the calendar view shown here. I'll come back to that in a second. The same goes for manual feeds. Like, I've noticed that people will just keep adding things to manual feeds until they're a mile long, hundreds of items. And I know this is a nightmare to maintain because you have to scroll and scroll and scroll to see what's even in the list of stuff. And it's also, again, generates a lot of extra data that has to be pulled down. And I would suggest, just as a general policy, that when you add an item, take an item off. Again, it depends on what the frequency is with which your site is pulling for data, but I think most of them, surely God, nobody spends more than a day waiting for the next pull. So the fire hose and the butterfly net. This is my favorite children's book, and it's also the metaphor that we chose to describe the technique that we feel people should be using. Some people use it, some people are aware of it, a lot of people aren't. And it essentially boils down to, for a given website, you have an automated feed that's sort of the bulk of your content. So it may be filtered to show everything in your group. This is telling me it's going to shut down again. All right, well, 10 minutes. And then you have an additional manual feed that you can cherry pick items to add to that. And Mercury Reader, you can actually enter multiple feed IDs. So, and it'll pull everything in and make nodes out of it, and you can arrange it however you like on that website. So we strongly encourage people to do this. And a couple things, you don't have to make a manual feed for every single item that you pull in. Like, one manual feed is fine. It's just a conduit. Throw things into it, take things out. I hate to end on a series of admonitions, but I'm going to anyway. So yeah, be tidy. And this actually this refers to the manual feeds again. Keep them short. Got my slides a little out of order here. And then keywords. Keywords, I think there are some people that think that the keywords in our various content types have something to do with SEO, and that maybe if you choose the right keywords, your stuff will be boosted somehow. It's none of that. They're essentially just like hashtags for the purpose of filtering. So something we see often, if there's some sort of campaign that takes place across several groups, they will agree upon a keyword and then build their feeds accordingly. So the feed will pull whatever that particular keyword is, and that way people in lots of different groups can contribute to a single feed. That's really what we're thinking about when we created the keywords field. And one request that I will send out to the entire Georgia Tech community: please don't take the body of the item and drop it in the keyword field. Because we have to clean that up, and it's bad. So yeah, don't do that, please. All right, having admonished everyone, I shall now tell you how you can admonish us. First of all, there's a page on Mercury, which it's essentially a frequently asked questions sort of thing. It's problems that people have frequently and easy fixes for them. If your problem is not addressed there is a contact form, a help request page. We ask that you fill it out as thoroughly as you can, and especially don't forget to include URLs of items that, am I running out of time? I am running out of time.
I'm told there's nothing we can do. I apologize.
That's right. Yes, so fill it out as thoroughly as you can. Make sure you include URLs for anything that's appropriate. So like if it's a problem with how it's being displayed on your website, include a URL of something that's not displaying properly. If you're of a more technical bent and you want to leave us something a little more detailed, you can look at the GitHub page for Mercury. I think there are currently about 50 issues in there, some of which are wish list kind of things that are, we'll add when we have time. There are a few fairly significant matters that we have not yet attended to, but if you go there and to add something, I would encourage you to look in the current issues first and make sure that there's not one already addressing the topic you have in mind. And you can, I think you can follow issues. If you create an issue, you will automatically follow it. So you will receive emails as we make notes on it and update it and change, set the priority and so on and so forth. I have no idea how long I spent.
So
20 minutes.
15, so you got...
Okay, well, you want to chat. I would add, if anybody has any questions, if anybody in line has questions, can they ask them? I don't know.
Yeah, I believe you're able to come off mute. If you're not, I am monitoring the chat. If you want to put it in the Q&A or the chat, if you have any questions, or you can come off mute. We're welcome to.
So, Fletch, how do people find out? I mean, like let's say I'm in a department, I hire a web developer to do content for me. Do I send them to you to learn about this? Is this something that just they should know? Should I be asking them?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because like that's communication. Even though we're in the Institute Communications department, it's not really our strong suite. Yeah, I would. If you have a new developer that wants to find out about this stuff, you can always drop an email to web team at contact.edu, or you can just drop a message in the help request form, and we will jump on it. So we can. I mean, this is obviously a lot of information is left out of here. There's like the locations of the how you get the Drupal module and where you will eventually get the WordPress module. All of that will be built into Campus Press. So. Not as big a deal, but yeah. And if you need a group created, I think there's actually a group request form on the site, which I didn't mention, but or if you need to be added to a group, you can contact the group manager. You can contact us. Either way, we'll get you sorted out.
And you said that within those groups decide who can alter content?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Who can edit content, who can create content within that group that can then be
And then
edited by.
everybody else just consumes the content they then edit.
Right, right, yeah, and we get, one of the things I wanted to address really with the whole talk about the fire hose and the butterfly net is we get a lot of people trying to clone content and make a duplicate of a particular thing so that they can then use it. And you don't have to do that. Please don't do that because it's just, then you have like multiple copies of the same thing and like which one is authoritative and so forth. Yeah, you can just use anybody's content and you're good to go.
You know, to that end, so the standard way that you have it set up is, you know, Mercury itself is a Drupal instance, and then there are the units have their Drupal instances, and then sort of this big XML gets transferred. The nodes over here become nodes here, nodes over here. Yeah. But in your slide, you acknowledge that there are custom, you know, customized ways of reading that XML, and the most common way, and there's an implementation we do in remote management, is just to take the XML and with front-end client-side JavaScript, just render it onto the page without ever making them as nodes.
That's it.
So are there merits to the way it's set up to say, okay, we're going to recreate these nodes on all of these versus just having it be JavaScript that client-side throws it onto the page?
Yeah, I mean, if you can make that work, I think that's fine. The one drawback at this point is that because it's sorted by most recently updated, things are going to be in a weird order. But you know, like on the client side, you can sort. Like if you're converting it into some sort of structure that's then going to be displayed to the page or whatever, you can just sort it by whichever field you want to sort by.
It's almost like an API. Like, and I guess with Drupal 10, you know, there's also built-in API, so you could almost tell it if you were doing something other than default sorting, you could probably put that in as parameters, right? And just so then, I guess the merits that would be, is there a problem with the load on Mercury, you know, additional pings, and also is there SEO? Because I mean, really, if you have that content, it's not like you need it to be there when Google goes to look for it, because it's in the news center, so it really shouldn't matter to your units.
Right.
So those would be the two things, that, you know, the load on Mercury and the SEO factor.
I mean, I think the load is not bad at the moment. I think if there were sites that were polling frequently and pulling like big XML files, you know, every 10 minutes or something like that, that would probably start to be a problem. And we encourage people to cache data whenever they can. And of course, the advantage of making a local node is that it makes a local node and it doesn't ever import that again as long as it's there. When you delete it, then it'll pull it in again, but it actually goes through and checks to make sure that it needs to recreate anything that's in the XML. So, you know, it could eventually be a problem. It's not a problem right now, and I'm not that worried about it.